Just in case you were asleep, wake you up a little bit. What a beautiful day to be in the house of Yahweh. Amen. Thanks for all the testimonies of how the Father even works in our life today. Can you believe that? All we have to do is call upon Him and have faith that He will answer and show up, and that we walk in that faith and we walk in His commands. So this is a very interesting Torah portion that we're studying today. In fact, you'll probably have to get to round table to get all of the information that's in this thing. We're just going to scrape the surface just a little bit, because there is so many stories within stories within stories here. So Vayera is the name of it, and it means He appeared. Genesis 18:1 through 22:24, one of the longer Torah portions. So this is a painting of a depiction of what we're going to read about, is that these three men appear suddenly to Abraham as he's sitting in his tent. And the artist here chose to depict him as laying upon his face. And I'm sure that if we ever truly met him face to face, we would be on our face, right? So this is what he chose, even though it says that he was sitting in his doorway of his tent when he saw these men appear. So we're going to get right into it. I'd like to say a good welcome to those that are on Facebook. I hope that you receive blessings each week if you're watching us weekly, and maybe have an opportunity to come and to worship with us. We want to welcome those that are new this morning. Thank you for spending your Shabbat morning with us, and that hope that you receive a blessing by being here and partaking of His Word. So we're going to get in at Genesis 18:1. It says, "And Yahweh appeared unto him in the plains of Mamre, and he sat in the tent door in the heat of the day. And he lifted up his eyes and looked, and lo, three men stood by him. And when he saw them, he ran to meet them from the tent door and bowed himself towards the ground and said, My Yahweh, if now I have found favor in thy sight, pass not by. I pray thee from thy servant. Let a little water, I pray you, be fetched, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree. And I will fetch a morsel of bread, and comfort ye your hearts. After that you shall pass on. For therefore are you come to your servant. And they said, So do as thou hast said." I guess one of the questions would be, how would you react if you were sitting on your porch or whatever, and three men come by, and would you invite them in and say, "Come on in and you can eat with us, and Mom will cook you up some food," or would we say, "What do you want, and what are you doing here, and what are you trying to sell?" That would be the thing maybe that we would say. You know, I've kind of got in this bad habit of answering my cell phone numbers that I don't know, that even sometimes are local numbers, and I'll answer it and I'll say, "Well, what are you selling today?" And I'm going like, well, that might be somebody that really would want to talk about the Word or some of those natures, but most of the time you either get a click or somebody says, they don't know what to say. But hospitality is kind of a dying thing, isn't it, in our society? Because we've seen so much violence, and we've seen so many other things that take place, that sometimes we're guarded with our own selves and our families and our homes and stuff. But I know that when I was growing up, my mom and dad never saw a stranger. even on the side of a road hitchhiking, we would stop and we would pick them up. So, and usually we'd either get them something to eat or take them home or whatever that it was. But we don't see much of that nowadays because, like I say, it's somewhat of a danger out there. But if Yahweh is riding with you, you shouldn't be too scared, right? Too frightened. So as we move on in this story, and Abraham hastened into the tent unto Sarah and said, "Make ready quickly 3 measures of fine meal, knead it, and make cakes upon the hearth." And Abraham ran unto the herd, and he fetched a calf tender and good, and gave it unto a young man, and he hastened to dress it. And he took butter and milk and the calf which he had dressed, and set it before them, and he stood by them under the tree, and they did eat. And they said unto him, "Where is Sarah thy wife?" Interesting. These are supposedly strangers going by the way. Evidently, Abraham lived on a well-traveled road, maybe the road to Sodom and Gomorrah, evidently. Yet when these people come by, they knew who Abraham only was, but they also knew his wife. And he says, "Well, where's your wife Sarah?" And he said, "Behold, in the tent." And he said, "I will certainly return unto thee according to the time of life." He being Yeshua. "I will certainly return unto thee according to the time of life. And lo, Sarah thy wife shall have a son." And Sarah heard it in the tent door which was behind him. So we know that from the stories that we've read that Abraham and Sarah were barren, and that both of them had prayed many, many years for a son. Even Abraham had spoken unto Yahweh and said, "I don't have an heir in my home, in my family. What am I going to do? I need an heir to pass on the heirship to him." And of course we know that the father said, you are going to have a son. But there was a long wait. Long wait of about 15 years, in fact. So you can imagine from a human standpoint that you probably, by that time, you'd probably given up. And maybe you was questioning yourself, did I really hear? Is that really what he said? So once again, you hear this same words being spoken. So we see that human nature, as we go on. Now Abraham and Sarah were old and well stricken in age, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, "After I am waxed old, shall I have pleasure, my master being old also?" And Yahweh said unto Abraham, "Wherefore did Sarah laugh, saying, Shall I of a surety bear a child which I am old? Is anything too hard for Yahweh? At the time appointed, I will return unto thee according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son." Then Sarah denied, saying, "I laughed not," for she was afraid. And he said, "Nay, but thou did laugh. Is anything too hard for Yahweh?" Nothing. So if we begin to doubt, is our prayers going to be answered, or is the things that he's promised us going to happen? Interesting thing here, he says, "at the appointed time." When you look that word up in the Hebrew, it's moed. And moed, as we're going to read here shortly, is an appointed time, a set time. much like today, is a moed. It is a set time. A set time that was set in the week of creation almost 6,000 years ago. He says, this day is a moed. This is a special appointed time. You have an appointment with me every 7 days to come and see me, and I will give you peace, and I will give you rest, and I will give you prosperity, and I will give you good health, and I will bring you the things that of necessity of life if you follow me. So if our doctor gave us an appointment every 7 days, and we felt like that there was something really wrong with us, would we be there? Or would we say, oh man, I don't want to see that doctor today. That stuff he gives me does work pretty good, but I'd rather be out doing something else. No, I think you would be there, particularly if you had something that was unto death. You would definitely be there. So, that's what he told Sarah. At an appointed time, at a moed. In fact, we could even maybe throughout this story maybe make a connection between the actual moed of the feast days. Because later in the story we see as they go to Sodom and Gomorrah, there is unleavened bread being made and so forth. So there is possibly a connection there, that this was really a moed, a feast day. Interesting enough, because the Passover is also a release, but it's also a time of destruction. So you might just keep that in mind, and maybe dig into your scriptures a little more and see if there is really a connection there. Going now to Genesis 21:1. And Yahweh visited Sarah as he had said, and Yahweh did unto Sarah as he had spoken. For Sarah conceived and bare Abraham a son in his old age at the set time of which Elohim had spoken to him. And Abraham called the name of his son that was born unto him, whom Sarah bare to him, Isaac. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac, being 8 days old, as Elohim had commanded him. And Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born unto him. And Sarah said, Elohim hath made me to laugh, so that all that hear will laugh with me and be joyful. Interesting. Even though he had promised her some 15 years before that time, why didn't he fulfill that promise earlier? I think one of the keys here is that what he said back here, it says, Abraham and Sarah were old and well stricken in age, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. She was well past bearing age. Some of the functions and things that take place in a woman to allow her to have children, as you age, you get further and further away from that. And I think that was the thing. Because God wanted her to know that he was the one that did it. It wasn't that by accident that they had this miracle child on their own. And of course we know the story how that she had gotten weary and taken her handmaiden and give it to Abraham, and they had a son called Ishmael. But that was not in God's plan. That was not the son that God said that he would give them. And it has caused a mountain of problems in Israel's life throughout all the ages, even up until today. Because we see the offsprings of that son causing problems, as the Bible says, as the Scripture says, as God says. He says, He will be a wild man, and his hand will be against all men. And so we see why that we have the things that are take place in the Middle East by those that are bent on exterminating and killing Israel and anybody else that gets in their way, because they are descendants of that seed. But we want to be a descendants of the seed of Isaac, because he says, "And Isaac shall be all the promises, and Isaac shall be the one that will be over the heads of all of Israel." So he wanted to make sure that they fully understood that this son was the son of promise, and that he had given it to them, that they just didn't miraculously have one on their own. Okay, as we look at the word Moed, and it's 4150 in the Strong's Concordance. If you don't have a concordance, you ought to get one, because it's a very interesting and very informative of how that you can really study and deeper, because when we get the translation out of the Hebrew into the English, we lose a lot of things. Just like that word there that we saw there, an appointed time. We would have just read right over that. Probably did in your earlier years when you were maybe in the Christian church or whatever, that when you read over that, it was just a appointed time or a time. Didn't really have any resonance with you. But when you look this word up, it says properly an appointment. That is a fixed time or season, specifically a festival, conventionally a year, by implication an assembly, as convened for a definite purpose. That's why we're here today, for a definite purpose. We're here at this Moed. Technically, the congregation, by extension the place of meeting, also a signal as appointed beforehand. In this case, he told them, in fact, 1 year. He says in 1 year, basically, that's what he's saying. This time you will have a son. Appointed, sign, time, place of, solemn, assembly, congregation, set solemn, feast, appointed, due, season, solemn, synagogue, or time appointed, a set time appointed. Okay, so what you will find as you study the scriptures, you'll find these words used that you didn't maybe recognize before. In the very opening text of Genesis 1 in the creation, he says that he made the sun and the moon for days, years, and for seasons. And when you look up that word seasons, we see that those are God's feast days, his festivals that he has appointed for man to come and to meet with him on. Okay, as we go on to Luke 1:5, we're going to see this same set of circumstances being played out in the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament. The same kind of a thing being happening here. Luke 1:5 says, "There was in the days of Herod the king of Judea a certain priest named Zechariah, of the course of Abia, and his wife was of the daughters of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. And they were both righteous before Elohim, walking in all the commandments and ordinances of Yahweh blameless. And they had no child, because that Elizabeth was barren, and they both were now well stricken in years." Almost the same story, right? "And it came to pass that while he executed the priest office before Elohim in the order of his course, according to the custom of the priest's office, his lot was to burn incense when he went in to the temple of Yahweh. And the whole multitude of the people were praying without at the time of the incense." Well, you know, we might say, well, what does that got to do with us today? We don't burn incense. But if you ever read Revelation, what does it say? Your prayers ascend from the altar of incense unto the Father. So there's still in existence that temple in heaven, that altar, that incense that are being applied with your prayers. As your prayers go up, that sweet savor of the incense goes with it. And this was the time of prayer by the priest for the whole of Israel, and also by the people that was around the temple. They were also praying with and at and for. Maybe it was for their own sins and things and own requests and so forth. But we know that Zechariah, he was praying for a son, right? Going on to Luke 1:11, and we see a strange word. The same word that's our Torah portion today. And there appeared unto him an angel of Yahweh standing on the right side of the altar of incense. And when Zechariah saw him, he was troubled, and fear fell upon him, because there was nobody else supposed to be in there except him. He was doing his duty. He was standing. You remember where is this altar at inside of the temple, inside of the sanctuary? Where is it? It stands right in front of the curtain that covers the Ark of the Testimony. So, and what's on the Ark of the Testimony? The seat that Jehovah sits on, the mercy seat is called, between the two cherubims. So he's standing right there, facing that. And there's nothing but a curtain here between him and the Almighty. But the angel said unto him, Fear not, Zechariah, for thy prayer is heard, and thy wife Elizabeth shall bear thee a son, and thou shalt call his name John. And thou shalt have joy and gladness, and many shall rejoice at his birth. Says, For he shall be great in the sight of Yahweh, and shall drink neither wine nor strong drink, and he shall be filled with the Holy Spirit, even from his mother's womb. Wow. How'd you like to have raised a child like that? Filled with the Holy Spirit from the moment of birth, the moment of conception, I should say. You know, because even God talks about how that he knew certain people while they were in the womb. And going on, and many of the children of Israel shall he turn to Yahweh their Elohim. And he shall go before him in the spirit and power of Elijah, to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the disobedient to the wisdom of the just, to make ready a people prepared for Yahweh. Wow. This in itself should have been such an eye-opening thing, because for nearly 4,000 years, or maybe a little bit less than that, but this promise had been made. In fact, the very last book of the Old Testament, the very last chapter, it says this very words. He says, before the end, what comes, that he will send Elijah the prophet, right? And he says that he will turn the hearts of the children to the fathers. So this was a promise that had been given. And we know that between the time of Malachi and the first book of the New Testament is somewhere around 400 years or so, called the silent years. There was no other prophet come after Malachi. So I'm sure that they were looking. But to hear these words, very words spoken, that were spoken by Malachi, some maybe 400 years before. And Zechariah said unto the angel, Whereby shall I know this? For I'm an old man, and my wife is well stricken in years. Same thing that Abraham said, right? And the angel answered, said unto him, I am Gabriel, that stand in the very presence of Elohim, and I am sent to speak unto you and to show these glad tidings. And behold, thou shalt be dumb, and not be able to speak until the day that these things shall be performed, because thou believed not my words, which shall be fulfilled in their what? Season. Once again, Moed, appointed time. He couldn't speak because he believed not his word. Human nature, right? We keep forgetting there's nothing impossible with God. And going on in Luke, we're going to see the other miraculous birth. Luke 1:26-31. And in the 6th month the angel Gabriel was sent from Elohim unto a city of Galilee named Nazareth, to a virgin espoused to a man whose name was Joseph, of the house of David, and the virgin's name was Miriam. And the angel came in, appeared, same word, same thing happened here as happened to Abraham, Zechariah, appeared unto her and said, Hail, thou that art highly favored, Yahweh is with thee. Blessed art thou among women. And when she saw him, she was troubled at his saying, and cast in her mind what manner of salutation this should be. And the angel said unto her, Fear not, Miriam, for thou hast found favor with Elohim. And behold, thou shalt conceive in thy womb, and bring forth a son, and shalt call his name Yeshua. And he shall reign over the house of Jacob forever. And of his kingdom there shall be no end. Then said Miriam unto the angel, How shall this be, seeing I know not a man? Once again, nothing's impossible with God. Do we use sometime... And the angel answered and said unto her, The Holy Spirit shall come upon thee, and the power of the highest shall overshadow thee. Therefore also that holy thing which shall be born of thee shall be called the Son of Yahweh. And behold, thy cousin Elizabeth, she hath also conceived a son in her old age. And this is the 6th month with her, who was called barren. For with Elohim nothing shall be impossible. Sometimes we clothe our doubt and say, well, you know, that couldn't happen. That can't happen. If you'd been in her stead, you'd probably said the same thing. Well, Father, how's this is going to happen? I've never been with a man. How can this happen? The other one was, well, I'm way too old. Genesis 18, back to Genesis 18. So we have found that there is truly nothing impossible. We clothe these things in excuses, where in reality we're lacking faith. Genesis 18, 16 through 19. And the men rose up from thence and looked toward Sodom, and Abraham went with them to bring them on their way. And Yahweh said, shall I hide from Abraham that thing which I do? Seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. For I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of Yahweh, to do justice and judgment, that Yahweh may bring upon Abraham that which he has spoken of him. Once again, a promise that he made to Abraham a long time ago. He says, and all this land I will give to you, and all of your seed. The promised seed will come through you. Interesting how that the Yahweh even thought about, should I hide this information? Should I not tell Abraham what's going to happen? Seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great mighty nation, for I know him. That he will command his children and his house so after him, and they shall keep the way of Yahweh. Can we say that Yahweh knows us? Does he know me? To the fact that he would share with each one of us? Does he know that we will keep his way? Interesting. It just stuck out to me. You know, we're always talking about that we need to know the Father, know who he is, what he does, and what he represents, and so forth. But I think some of the other thing we need to consider is, does he know us? Does he know us in the context that we're longing to know him? Or does he say, yeah, I know that guy. He falls all the time, and he doesn't get up? Or does he say, I know him because I know that he will walk in my way? Going on in Genesis 26, 1-5. There was a famine in the land beside the first famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went unto Abimelech, king of the Philistines, unto Ger. And Yahweh appeared unto him and said, go not down into Egypt, dwell in the land which I shall tell thee of. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with thee, and I will bless you. For unto you and unto thy seed I will give all of these countries, and I will perform the oath which I swear unto Abraham thy father. And I will make thy seed to multiply as the stars of heaven, and will give unto thy seed all of these countries, and in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. Because that Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. Because that is why that he knew Abraham. Because he knew and he saw that he kept all of his statutes and judgments. So we may ask the question, how do we really get to know him and he get to know us? Deuteronomy 4:9-13 says, only take heed to thyself and keep thy soul diligently, lest thou forget the things which thine eyes have seen, and lest they depart from thy heart all the days of thy life, but teach them thy sons and thy sons' sons, especially the day that thou stood before Yahweh the Elohim in Horeb. When Yahweh said unto me, Gather me the people together, and I will make them hear my words, that they may learn to fear me all the days that I shall live, that they shall live upon the earth, and that they may teach their children. Well, were we standing there at that? Did we hear the Father's voice? Yes, we did. That's what it says. It says he made that covenant with Israel and those that were there and those that were not there, those to the end of the world. We heard those words through our ancestors because our ancestors sent the word on down. That's why it's important that we teach our children the word, to keep this going on, or that when they stand, that they can say, I heard those words. I was standing there at that mountain. It says, and you came near and you stood under the mountain, and the mountain burned with fire into the midst of heaven, with darkness and clouds and with thick darkness. And he declared unto you his covenant, which he commanded you to perform, even 10 commandments, and he wrote them upon 2 tables of stone. And Yahweh spake unto you out of the midst of the fire, and you heard the voice of his words, but saw no similitude, only you heard a voice. And he declared unto you his covenant, which he commanded you to perform, even 10 commandments, and he wrote them upon 2 tables of stone. And Yahweh commanded me at that time to teach you statutes and judgments, that you might do them in the land, whether you go over to possess it. You know, a couple of weeks ago we were talking about this idea of the 10 commandments and the book of the law and these types of things. How that some people say, well, the book of the law is the book of Moses, and Moses wrote it, so on and so forth. But we see right here, he says, when he was in the mountain, receiving the 10 commandments, that he also received the statutes and judgments at the same time. Interesting. Just put that back there. When you start reading in Deuteronomy and these types of things, then you get a fuller understanding of what this book of the law really is. It's directly from Jehovah, God of our Father, written down by Moses. It said, because Yahweh commanded me at that time to teach you statutes and judgments, how to live out his Torah. These were kingdom principles that he was giving to a nation. He wasn't just giving this to a bunch of people running around and saying, here, take these laws. No. He was setting up a nation, a government, and a people. Because all of his laws are kingdom living laws. If you want to live in my kingdom, these are the laws of the kingdom. But sometimes we get lost in the idea that we want to live in God's kingdom, but we want to go by our own laws. Or we want to have man's law. When thou art in tribulation and all these things are come upon you, even in the latter days, if thou turn to Yahweh the Elohim and shall be obedient unto his voice, for Yahweh the Elohim is a merciful El, he will not forsake thee, neither destroy thee, nor forget the covenant of thy fathers which he sware unto them. So he doesn't forget like man forgets. Going on to Colossians 3:12. Put on therefore as the elect of Elohim, holy and beloved, tender mercies, kindness, humbleness of mind, meekness, long suffering, forbearing one another, forgiving one another, If any man have a quarrel against any, even as the master forgave you, so also do you. And above all these things, put on love, which is the bond of perfection. And let the peace of the Messiah rule in your hearts, to the which also you are called in one body, and be you thankful. Let the word of the Messiah dwell in you richly in all wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing with grace in your heart to Elohim. So this is the finer parts. Really, this is the heavier, weightier matters of the law. Sometimes we get on this side and all of these strict rules and regulations and law, man, we got to do these and these and these and these. And sometimes we forget about the weightier matters is, where is your heart? Where are you in your heart? If the Torah is not bringing love and these types of things into your heart, then you're not really following all of what the Torah says. If we want to pick one part of it and say law, 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 how about love and compassion and grace and all these things? Forbearing one another, forgiving one another. It says, if a man have a quarrel against any, even as the master forgave you, so also do you. And above all things, put on love, which is the bond of perfection. Because that we read these scriptures where it says, be you perfect, for I am perfect. What makes that whole thing perfect? Not only walking in his statutes, but walking in it in love. Let it truly penetrate your heart. Because that's that was the thing of this whole new covenant, is that I'm going to write my laws upon your heart. You shall be my people, and I will be your God. It says, and let the peace of the Messiah rule in your heart. How peaceful are you? Are you really worried every day about what's going on? Are you worried about your job? Are you worried about this, worried about that? And what's going to happen in this world and all the things that are going on? You know, we sometimes get caught up in all these worries, and we lose our peace. We can have access to that peace through the Messiah if we let him rule in our heart, knowing that all and nothing is impossible with God. Even all of this COVID thing and all the other craziness that we see in our government and so on and so forth. Going on in Colossians 4, Masters, give unto your servants that which is just and equal, knowing that ye also have a master in heaven. Continue in prayer and watch in the same with thanksgiving. Walk in wisdom toward them that are without, redeeming the time. Let your speech be always with grace, seasoned with salt, that you may know how you ought to answer every man. That was a pretty good example this morning of two testimonies that was giving about how to answer accusations and people pointing their finger at you. Let your speech be always with grace, seasoned with salt, that you may know how to answer every man. You know, that was one of the things that Solomon, in the writings of his writings, says, a soft answer will turn away wrath. So, when you get into those situations where that you want to use the five fingers ministry is what he was saying, you know, then think about a soft, easy word that you could say that would diffuse that situation. Because I've practiced that myself, and it's really eye-opening what it will do to any situation that you find yourself in. Because it takes two to tango, right? All right, going on to Mark 9:50. Salt is good, but if the salt has lost his saltiness, wherewith will you season it? Have salt in yourself, and have peace one with another. Salt in yourself. Speech seasoned with salt. Well, you know, in eating any food, I know that even though in America we are people that eat way too much salt, but if you don't have a little bit of salt, everything's pretty bland. So, having salt in your speech would be that you would be an humble servant. That you would not answer with a word of anger. But sanctify the Messiah as sovereign in your hearts, and be ready always to give an answer to every man that asks you a reason of the hope that is in you with meekness and fear. Give an answer to every man that asks you, and tell him how stupid he is because he didn't read the Bible for himself. Is that what it says? No. With meekness and fear. Wow. It's pretty easy to condemn people. But we need to use grace and meekness and love, compassion. First Chronicles 28:8. Now therefore in the sight of all Israel, the congregation of Yahweh, and in the audience of our Elohim, keep and seek for all the commandments of Yahweh your Elohim, that you may possess this good land and leave it for an inheritance for your children after you forever. You know, even that would apply to our great land. You know, in a sense, that has been our promised land or whatever. That we may possess this good land and leave it for an inheritance to our children. If we live the principles of kingdom living. And thou, Solomon, my son, know thou the Elohim of thy father, and serve him with a perfect heart and with a willing mind. For Yahweh searches all hearts and understands all the imaginations of the thoughts. Whoa. Whoa. That's sometimes not too good. He understands all the imaginations of the thoughts. Wow. Searches our heart. If thou seek him, he will be found of you, but if thou forsake him, he will cast you off. Psalms 4:3 says, but know that Yahweh has set apart him that is kind for himself. Yahweh will hear when I call upon him. You want to be a set apart people? You know, that's what I hear a lot in this movement. Oh, we're a set apart people. That's what we call holy, is to be set apart. He said he wants to set those apart that have a kind heart, that have kindness in their dealings. That you can truly be set apart. Psalms 139 says, search me, O El, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts. And see if there be any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. I don't know. Sometime I'd be scared to ask him Search me. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? I, Yahweh, search the heart. I try the reins, even to give every man according to his ways and according to the fruit of his doings. But you know what? He goes on in Jeremiah and he says, and I will give them a heart to know me, that I am Yahweh, and they shall be my people, and I will be their Elohim, for they shall return unto me with their whole heart. And in John 13 we read, a new commandment I give unto you, that you love one another as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this shall all men know that ye are my disciples, if you have love one to another. Well, I thought he would know us by how much knowledge we have, how much following the Torah that we will have. It says, all men know that you are my disciples if you have love one to another. Pretty good task. 1 Peter 4:7. But the end of all things is at hand. Be you therefore sober and watch unto prayer. You know, we thinking that we're in the latter days and the end days and the bad days, or whatever other name you want to call. If we are, then we need to be sober and watch unto prayer. And above all things, have fervent love among yourselves, for love shall cover the multitude of sins. Use hospitality one to another without grudging. As every man hath received the gift, even so minister the same one to another, and as good stewards of the manifold grace of Yahweh. And look at the grace that we have gotten. Look at the love that we have gotten from him. We need to turn that to the other people we come in contact. It says, whoever brings blessings will be enriched, and one who waters will himself be watered. Hebrews 13 says, let brotherly love continue. Be not forgetful to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unaware. Well, story of Abraham, he did. He didn't really recognize them until they got a little closer, I would imagine. But I guess the question would be, too, if we had strangers come and we entertained them, and first, would we recognize who they are? Or would we say, man, that guy's he's a hobo. He's a deadbeat. He's a druggie. We don't need him in here. Matthew 22:36-40. Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law? Yeshua said unto him, thou shalt love Yahweh thy Elohim with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy might. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like unto it, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. If we could just do those. It says, therefore all things whatsoever you would that men should do to you, do you even so to them, for this is the law and the prophets together. The golden rule. You don't hear much of the golden rule nowadays, do you? It used to be a thing that was talked about a lot. Now the rule is, do to them before that they can do unto you. So, Matthew 7:13-20 says, enter you in the straight gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat. Because straight is the gate, and narrow is the way which leads unto life, and few there be that find it. It says, beware of false prophets which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravaging wolves. You shall know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes of thorns or figs of thistles? Even so, every good tree brings forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree brings forth evil fruit. So wherefore by their fruits you shall know them. How is your fruit today? Is there some rotten pears on there or whatever that we probably need to pull off and throw in the trash? Going on in Matthew 7, this is the one that everybody loves to quote. Let's look at it. Not every one that says unto me, Sovereign, sovereign, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, Sovereign, sovereign, have we not prophesied in your name? And in thy name have cast out devils? And in thy name done many wonderful works? And then will I profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity. This goes back to this whole thing we've been talking about. Does God know us? Does God know you? Does he know me? Because here he says, I never knew you. Even though you did all these great, wonderful things, you that work iniquity. So let's look at a couple of words here. Knew or to know. It's a prolonged form of a primary verb, to know. Absolutely. In a great variety of applications and with many implications, has shown it left with others not thus clearly expressed. Allow, be aware of, feel, have known, or knowledge, perceive, be resolved, can speak, be sure, understand. These are all of the definitions of this word, gensoki, I guess is how you pronounce it in the Greek. To know absolutely. The other words, iniquity. It's the Greek 458. It's anomia. Anomia. Illegally. That is, violation of law, or generally wickedness. Iniquity, transgressions of the law, unrighteousness without law. That is the word anomia. And that is the word found there when it says iniquity, anomia. Basically, they are violators of God's law, or they have done away with the law. It's what we have found so often in our walk, that that we want to do away with God's law and replace it with nothing but grace. Grace is an important factor, but it has to be also with law. Romans 13:8-10 says, Owe no man anything but to love one another, for he that loves another hath fulfilled the law. So in Romans, where you read there, he says, I come not to destroy the law, but to fulfill. He really fulfilled the law with his love towards mankind, and showed how that if you love me, keep my commandments. That's how you fulfill the law. It's not only walk in his statutes and judgments, but also to walk in his love and show your love to other people and to him. That's how you fulfill the law. Live it out. For this, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness, thou shalt not covet. If there be any other commandment, it is briefly comprehended in this same saying, namely, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Love works no ill to his neighbor, Therefore, love is the fulfilling of the law. Attempting to keep the Torah outside of the heart is just sheep's clothing, just pretending. If you keep the Torah outside of your heart, it becomes just a rote thing. You're just playing church, basically. Matthew 5, 1-7. And seeing the multitudes, he went up into a mountain, and when he was set, his disciples came unto him. And he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see Elohim. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of Yahweh. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when men shall revile you and persecute you, and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely for my name's sake. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For so persecuted they the prophets which were before you. You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt shall lose its favor, wherewith shall it be salted? It is therefore good for nothing but to be cast out and be trodden under foot of men. You are the light of the world, a city that's set on a hill that cannot be hid. These are truly the steps of the Torah. If you can read all those things and picture yourself in those, then you fulfill the law. And we'll close with this. John 14:15. If you love me, keep my commandments. He that hath my commandments and keeps them, it is that loves me. And he that loves me shall be loved of my Father, and I will love him, and will manifest myself to him. Yeshua answered and said unto him, If a man love me, he will keep my words, and my Father will love him, and we will come unto him and make our abode with him. So, said all this to say this. This is how he gets to know us and we him. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you for watching a teaching from Emet HaTorah. If you are ever in the Odessa area, we would love to welcome you to our Shabbat service, 11 a.m. every Sabbath. For more information or for more teachings, feel free to find us on the web, www.emethatorahodessa.com. Also, you can find us on Facebook. Thank you. God bless you and your family. Shalom.